this term, we've already begun looking at non-linear texts. Now, it's something that I haven't done for quite a long time, and I haven't done here before. They're very interesting because they behave in a different way to the stories that they've all been used to reading. So our normal stories are very linear in that, you know, you have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 continues to the end in a straight line, no deviation. A non-linear text enables you to make choices and choose your pathways. There are multiple pathways to travel on. So there'll be often one introductory paragraph, and then there'll be 4 choices at the end of that paragraph, and then there'll be 4 chapter 1s to go between. You choose one of those, and then from there you get to choose between 4 chapter 2s, and then again 4 endings. So it requires a lot of writing, because obviously these stories are much bigger than the stories they're used to handling. So it's going to be a cooperative work. We're going to create eventually, once we've studied the text. At the moment we're looking at devices and language and the structure of these kind of texts. They're usually very much based on a quest of some sort, which has appealed to all of them. They like sort of fantasy quest adventures where somebody's seeking something out, because that lends itself very well to having a choice of pathways. And it also lends itself very well to games, computer games, so they've been looking for homework to see if they can find some examples of non-linear games, and there are quite a lot once you get out there looking at them, and we looked at a few of them in class yesterday, the ones that they've managed to find for homework. It's lovely having the free choice. They really like the idea of the challenge of having the free choice. So when we go on to working and planning and storyboarding, we're going to work in collaborative groups, because obviously we could have up to 13 paragraphs to write. 13 chapters of the story to write, so that's quite a lot of text. So we're going to be planning and drafting in groups, and then maybe you could have one group responsible for one pathway, another group responsible for another one, and then eventually we'll put the whole thing together. And it, rather than being a paper-based end product, it obviously lends itself much more to being an ICT-based end product, so that you've got a PowerPoint presentation that you can have put little links in that you can move to different parts of the story, which will be great for developing their skills in ICT and being able to work out how we're going to create that, how can we do that. We've played with texts, and we're reading one called BarrowQuest, which is on a PowerPoint, and it's got hyperlinks so that you can flip between places. We haven't worked out how to create that yet, but we will do. It's something that we're
when you do,
something that we're working on. And again, bringing all their knowledge of language into that. They're very heavy. We've been looking at them and analysing the text. These texts are very heavy on description, and because of the settings are very often fantastical settings, the language is beautiful. Anything goes. You can have exploding plant pods that give off poisonous gas. We've had that already. So anything goes, and really making it come alive and be very vivid. So they're being able to bring in some of the things that they learnt last term and apply those to this as well. Then use of extra things as well, like rhetorical questions. That can be quite useful if you're using the narrative voice. You don't want dialogue in these, because quite often it's one person who's making this amazing voyage of discovery to try and track down whatever it is they have to track down. So quite often rhetorical questions, what they're asking themselves, gets you to understand the character really well. So it's a completely new one for them, and they're finding it really quite interesting. It's not that easy to get your head around, but once you've got your head, they've all managed to get their head around the structure and how it works now. We've done lots of diagrams to try and work out how they follow. So that's been really interesting. Also, I want to tell you a little bit about our class targets. Lorna's going to tell you in a minute about the maths targets that we've got, but I'm going to tell you about our literacy target for this half term. Class targets we identify from assessments and from pupils' work. The children have their individual targets, which are identified directly from their own work, but we also identify a class target. So if there's something that we think, or a group target, that's something that we want to focus on with the whole class that we've identified as an area for development, that's our class target. And this half term we're looking at spelling. We have layered targets at the moment, and we're looking to improve their use of strategies. They're very good at learning their spellings, and they're very good at applying their knowledge of the common spellings and the patterns that they've been looking at, but they don't always apply those again in their own work. So we're using spelling logs in class, which are books that are personal to them. They're not for the most difficult word they can come across to write in. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for are words that they're maybe repeatedly finding difficult. There might be a word with a double letter in it that they just can't get to grips with, or a word with a vowel sound that's not heard. There's a couple of words like that that catch them out, where you can't hear that sound, so often you don't put it in. So the children are going to keep these logs and go back to them. It's something that they can do independently. They can get tested by their peers, so they can say, look, here's my word, we've got 5 minutes, reading during reading time or any other spare time they might have. They're going to test each other, and once that word is secure, then they can come and tell me that they've managed to securely spell that word, and we can check for evidence of that in their work. Spelling tests are continuing on Wednesdays. They had their first one yesterday. I think they need to get used to learning them again. Some of them, they had great results, but some of them were very honest, and those who didn't have the best results said, I don't think I put the time in this week. So it's getting back into the swing of term again to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to display in the classroom the word list that they've had for this term, so that they're all current, so that we can also revisit, because we're aware of the fact that sometimes as we move on week by week, the words that they're misspelling might have been ones that we had 2 weeks before, so if they're there and visible, we can refer back to them and say, remember, this is the pattern that we had a couple of weeks ago, and try and repeatedly apply these techniques.